Hey everyone, welcome to our NFL Wildcard predictions video. So we do have the first round of the playoffs coming up this weekend. We have games on Saturday, Sunday, and one game on Monday night. And like we said, this is the first round of the playoffs for that 2023 to 2024 NFL season. And we'll be looking at our predictions this week. So who's going to win, who's going to lose, and what we predict the final scores will be. So go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. So getting things started, Saturday, January 13th, 2024 at 4:30 p.m. on NBC. We have the 11-6 Cleveland Browns playing the 10-7 Houston Texans. Cleveland comes in here as 2.5-point favorites. This is the AFC wildcard round. So when you're looking at this game, obviously the Browns this past weekend, they did rest a lot of their starters, so they should be pretty rested here. They have a really good defense. Defense should be rested. Basically, everyone sat the game last weekend, but they have a really good team. So Joe Flacco has come in basically the last, 6 to 7 weeks. He's been going off. He's been a massive upgrade, actually, over Deshaun Watson. So with the Browns, they lost Watson, they lost Chubb, but yet they overcame the injuries, and it seemed like they kept getting better week to week, and they had a really solid season so far. And they have a top 5 defense. So you know that you can technically win playoff games and a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco as long as you have a really good defense. He did do that with the Ravens back in, 2011 or so. Flacco knows how to not do anything to lose the game. Just make sure to not make any mistakes. Looking at the Houston Texans, they had a really solid season so far. Obviously, they came in with their division. CJ Stroud is the offensive rookie of the year at this point of the season. They've had a really strong season. You have CJ Stroud closing in on 4,200 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 picks. You had a good running back with Singletary, and you also had Collins step in as a number 1 wide receiver with 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. Looking at the total team stats here, you have the Browns coming in. They average 23.3 points per game. Houston averages 22.2 points per game. So both have pretty decent offenses. And on defense, the Browns give up 21.3 points per game. Houston gives up 20.8 points per game. The Browns are the rested team. Like we said, they did rest their starters, but Houston has been the hot team of the second half. But I'm actually going to go with the Browns getting the win here. So they are 2.5-point favorites. I have them winning 24-20 and covering that spread. Their defense is too good. They do have one of the best defenses in the country right now. They have a really solid offense so far. The Browns beat the Texans pretty bad last time they played. I don't think that they're going to beat them that bad this time, but they still have Joe Flacco and they still have Cooper, and they have a really good defense. That should keep the game close. Flacco will be able to score enough points to get the win and to move on to the next round. The next game that we'll be looking at is also on Saturday at 8 p.m. on Peacock, which is a real shame because a lot of people won't be able to watch this game. But at 8 p.m. we have the 11-6 Miami Dolphins versus the 11-6 Kansas City Chiefs. This is also the AFC wildcard round. Kansas City comes in here as 4-point favorites. Now, I would actually go with the Dolphins getting the win if they had their entire healthy team. But this is probably the most banged up team in all of professional football right now. They have a lot of playmakers out. They have Phillips out. They have Chubb out. We don't know if Howard will be back at the cornerback position. They lost Van Winkle. They lost a lot of players. So this is a pretty depleted roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Now, they still do have one of the best offensive rosters, if not the best offensive roster. They have Tua, they have Mostert, they have Achin, they have Hill, Waddle, Berrios. But the last few weeks, they've actually been without Mostert and without Waddle. That's a massive loss. So Waddle is hands down one of the best number 2s in the country. And then you also have Mostert, who was top 5 rushing so far this year. So them not having them was a big hit. That did kind of affect the offense, but they still have a really good offensive roster. As of right now, Mostert and Waddle should be back to being playing. So that's going to make things a lot easier for Hill. They've been double covering Hill. It's really hard to double cover Hill. Obviously, this is a personal game for Hill. He did play for the Chiefs, so he wants to put up big numbers here. But they're just really banged up. It's not the Dolphins' fault. This was a Super Bowl contending team so far this year, but that defense has been wrecked. They're probably down right now 6 starters on defense, and they're also down 3 offensive starters on the line on their offense. So almost half of their number 1 roster will not be playing this game. That's a pretty hard hill to have to overcome right there. Looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously they did rest a lot of their starters this past weekend, so you are hoping, if you are a Chiefs fan, that you resting them coming into the playoffs this round, that gave Mahomes some breathing room, some wiggle room for them to try to figure out a couple things. This has not been the Chiefs' year so far this year. Their offense has looked really bad. They have a really good defense, so they have a top 10 defense. That's basically their saving grace this year. Usually they have a really good offense and a so-so defense. This year they have a really good defense, so-so offense. Their biggest problem has been drop balls, a lot of drop passes, a lot of butterfingers going on. So basically outside of Travis Kelce, sometimes Rice, there's really no one else that has stepped up to be able to consistently catch the ball. Looking at the team stats here, Miami comes in with the top 3 offense. They average 29.2 points per game. They obviously just lost their last game to the Bills. Kansas City comes in, a lot of room for improvement on the offense. They average 21.8 points per game. And on defense, Miami gives up 23.0 points per game. Kansas City gives up 17.3 points per game. Obviously, like I said, if Miami had their starting roster, if they just had a couple less players missing, I would pick the Dolphins to win this game. They've had the better season. They are the better team, but they're just limping into the playoffs with too many injuries. I have Kansas City getting the win here, 27-24. So I do not have them covering the spread. So I'm going with that plus 3.5 here, but I wouldn't be surprised if that line moves down as this game gets closer. The next games I will be looking at, we'll be moving on to our Sunday round. So Sunday, January 14th at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 10-7 Pittsburgh Steelers versus the 11-6 Buffalo Bills. This is also a AFC wildcard matchup here. Buffalo comes in. They are 10-point favorites here. Pretty big spread, but you definitely understand why. So props to Mike Tomlin, props to the Steelers. They did make the playoffs. That's a pretty big accomplishment for them because they have virtually no offense. So they've had a quarterback carousel, whether it was Pickett, Rudolph. They don't have an answer at the quarterback position. Pretty much since Ben Roethlisberger retired, they have not answered the question of who is going to be their starting quarterback going forward. Bills, obviously, they have a top 10 offense, top 10 defense, but they've been a very flip-flop team so far this year. They've actually not played well. So they did clinch their division, but they've played pretty sloppy for the last month. They have to get things right. Josh Allen has had way too many turnovers. So he's closing in. He has 4,300 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 18 picks, 18 interceptions. That's really bad. Pittsburgh has a really good defense. TJ Watt is hurt, and that's a massive loss for them, but they still have a good defense. They're probably going to force 1 or 2 turnovers this game. But the Bills' offense is so good, and they still have a really good defense. So they're basically going to be shutting the Steelers down. So that should give Josh Allen some breathing room that he doesn't have to have a shootout with the Steelers. So don't do anything crazy. You don't need to score 40 points to beat the Steelers. You just have to score 20 points. That's it. But the Buffalo, they have the way better roster. So they have Cook at running back. They have Diggs at wide receiver. Looking at the team stats here, the Steelers average 17.9 points per game. Buffalo has a top 10 offense. They average 26.5 points per game. And on defense, Pittsburgh gives up 19.1 points per game. Buffalo has a top 5 defense. They give up 18.3 points per game. Even though Buffalo's a 50-50 team, they play good teams really good. They play bad teams really bad. They play up and down to their competition. I have the Buffalo Bills getting the win here. This team is a lot better than their record shows. I have them winning 28-17 and still covering that spread. The next game that we're looking at on Sunday at 4:30 p.m. on Fox, we have the 9-8 Green Bay Packers. They made the playoffs. Prop to them. They had a really good second half of the season. They'll be playing the 12-5 Dallas Cowboys. This game is going to be in Arlington, so the Cowboys will be playing at home. This is the NFC Wildcard round. Dallas is 7.5-point favorites here. So Packers, like we said, they had a really good second half to the season. Jordan Love had a pretty sloppy first half, but he came on big time second half. Finished the year 4,200 yards passing, 36 total touchdowns. This guy was going off. He didn't have very many picks. Really strong end to the season. They have Jones at running back. They have Reed at wide receiver. Dallas, though. Dallas is a stacked team. They are undefeated at home this year. 8-0 at home. They look to continue that streak here, trying to get the 9th win, trying to move on to the next round of the playoffs. They have one of the top 3 NFL rosters. They have a top 5 offense, top 5 defense. They're good on both sides of the ball. Looking at the total team stats here, Green Bay averages 22.5 points per game. Dallas has a top 3 offense. They average 29.9 points per game. And on defense, Green Bay has a pretty decent defense. They have a pretty good run defense also. So they average 20.6 points per game. Dallas, top 5 defense. They average 18.5 points per game. So Green Bay, They are the underdogs. If they have any chance this game, their goal is going to be to stack the line. They have a good rush defense, shut down Pollard, force Dak Prescott to have to beat you vertically through the air, make him have to force the ball down the field, put pressure on him, flush him out. But Dallas is more than fine with that. So even if you shut down Pollard, Prescott's closing in on 4,600 yards, 36 touchdowns, 9 picks. So he can definitely throw for 350 if he needs to throw for 350. CeeDee Lamb had just under 1,800 yards this year and 12 touchdowns. So he's perfectly fine with getting 150 this game. They have no problem with that. They can beat you running, throwing. They can also beat you on defense. I have Dallas getting the win here, 30-20. I have them covering that spread and staying undefeated at home. The next game, final game on Sunday at 8 p.m. on NBC, we have the 10-7 LA Rams versus the 12-5 Detroit Lions. Detroit is 3-point favorites here. This is also the NFC Wildcard round. So the Rams, they rested everyone this past weekend, so their offense, which is basically the saving grace of this team, Stafford, Williams at running back, they have Nakua, they have Cooper Kupp. They can move the ball on the ground. They can move the ball vertically. The defense also played a lot better for the last month of the season. So pretty good team, pretty hot second half team. So you definitely want to keep your eye on them. Detroit, they were a really hot first round team. And then going into the second half of the season, they kind of fell off. So their offense got really sloppy. They had a lot of turnovers. Defense started getting gashed every single weekend. But the last couple of weeks, they've kind of looked a little better. Goff had a really good year. He had just under 4,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, 12 picks. They can also run it, and St. Brown should be back at wide receiver. He had just over 1,500 yards. So he's definitely, hands down, one of the better wide receivers in the country right now. But the Rams' offense is really clicking. This is a really tough game. I was 50-50, kind of flipped back and forth throughout this one. Looking at the total team stats here, the Rams average 23.8 points per game. Detroit averages 27.1 points per game. And on defense, the Rams give up 22.2 points per game, and the Lions give up 23.2 points per game. I actually, like I said, I was 50-50 on this. I went back and forth. I would stay away from this game because I think with how well the Rams offense has been playing, they can make a game of this. And sometimes Detroit gets scorched. So this game could easily turn into a shootout. Whenever a shootout happens, it's anyone's game. Just whoever has the ball last. I have the Rams winning 30-27. So I'm going with that +3. I'm not necessarily confident in this. Once I make my bets video later this week, I'll see what the line is then, see if we have any injuries. But as of right now, I have the Rams stealing the win here, getting a big upset, and moving on to the next round. Like I said, winning 30-27. And our final game of the weekend for this round of the playoffs, Monday, January 15th at 8:15 p.m. on ESPN or ABC. We have the 11-6 Philadelphia Eagles versus the 9-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is also the NFC Wildcard round. Philadelphia is 3-point favorites here with the Eagles. They had one of the worst ends to the season, probably them and the Jags, were the two teams that finished 1-5 their last 6 games. That's just completely pathetic. They were 10-1, and then they went 1-5 their last 6 games. Completely fell apart. But when you look at the roster, you just don't know how that happened. They had Hurts, they had Swift at running back, they had A.J. Brown, they had Smith. This team is loaded. They had a top 3 offensive line, and then everything just fell off. Hurts had a bad year, a lot of turnovers, but he's also been hurt the whole season. The offensive line was not the same. They also had a lot of injuries. Defense completely fell apart from last year. They led the country in sacks last year, and now their defense gets lit up every single week. So this team is not the team they were last year, but do not underestimate their roster. They have a lot of talent there, but last week they had some injuries. Hurts came out. You saw what happened to his middle finger. He got hurt. As of right now, he hasn't been cleared to play Monday. So he's questionable, probably will play, but hasn't been 100% cleared. That's a big question mark because we're looking at this game and the starting quarterback might not be playing. Also, A.J. Brown got hurt. One of the top 10 wide receivers, top 5, top 3 wide receivers, he also might not play. He got hurt last weekend. He hasn't been totally cleared yet. So a lot of question marks with the Eagles as of today. Obviously, Tampa Bay kind of came out of nowhere. Baker Mayfield had a comeback player of the year season. This guy went off. He had 4,100 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 picks. This is the best Baker Mayfield that you will see. There's good Baker, bad Baker. There's zero middle ground. There's never an average Baker. He's either really good or really bad. Props to Baker Mayfield. He's been good Baker Mayfield the whole season. This team has a pretty good defensive line. They play tough defense, and they have playmakers. They have Godwin. They have Evans. So they could upset the Eagles here. It is very possible. Looking at the team stats here, you have the Eagles coming in. They average 25.5 points per game. The Buccaneers average 20.5 points per game. And on defense, Philadelphia just gets lit up every week. They give up 25.2 points per game. Tampa Bay, really solid defense. They give up 19.1 points per game. So when you're looking at this one, the Eagles are the 3-point favorites here. I have Tampa Bay getting the win, 24-21. So I'm going with the +3. Why? The reason that I am is because of the question marks. I hate not knowing the variables. We don't know if Hurts is playing. We don't know if A.J. Brown is playing. I can't pick the Eagles until I know. So obviously, this is my predictions video. Later this week, once we have a little more info, that's when I do my best bets video. So maybe they're cleared. Maybe they're back to 100%, and that will have changed. But as of right now, because if they don't roll out Hurts, if they don't roll out A.J. Brown, this team has absolutely no chance. If they roll out Hurts and he's at 20%, because he was already banged up and now his hand's hurt, they might not win this game. So just because we don't know these things, as of right now, those positions are question marks. So I'm going to go with Tampa Bay, who has been the hotter team second half. Eagles have completely fallen off the rails. But that's just as of right now. So that's my breakdown of the first round, the wild card round for the NFL season. Hit that like button and subscribe. If you have any comments, drop them below and I'll make sure to respond. Thanks.